All right, electric cars are said to be environmental friendly, but they are said to emit fewer greenhouse gases as well as air pollutants. To discuss e-mobility and what investors in Kenya are doing in regards to electric cars is none other than Frederick Muteti, Agilita East Africa Managing Director. Welcome on set. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. Frederick, let's begin by understanding about these electric cars and what uptake we are having in the country in regards to the electric cars.
Basically, we are looking at they're about, according to Kenya Power Statistics, they're talking about almost 1,000 vehicles. I think you can see most of the Uber, most of the taxi hailing companies, most of them have uptaken. They've already uptaken Uber and electrical vehicles in their system. Why so? Because one, that's where to go. That's green. That's the direction for everyone.
But then we are having the issue of charging ports. I understand there are quite a number of electrical cars that we are having in the country, but even for them to be so effective, there are issues with charging ports. Way forward for this from where you sit?
Now, I'll speak from Agility East Africa. Agility we've developed will be the first in Africa to develop the fast and off-grid systems. Our systems are totally different, where you find we'll have a charging port system that charges through solar and can be used and has a retaining of capacity of more power when there is no solar. For the purposes of off-grid, we are not only looking for home solutions, for car solutions, but home solutions as well. So the issue of the charging ports, they come standard, and they come now on our end. We are developing home packs that will be able to charge from zero to 100 between 12 to 15 minutes for a full charge.
But looking at how many cars we could be using when we say we are fully transmitting from the fuel, the cars that use fuel, because actually it's on the higher end to use fuel in the country, and many of us would opt to shift gears to the other side. How long will it take us to adjust to this and put everything in place for all of us to change to electric cars?
Well, it takes policies, government policies. Around 2 countries or 3 countries in Africa have banned the number of used cars. The bigger problem we are facing in Africa, and Kenya not being an exception, is over 40%. It's only 40%. It's only 16% of the cars in the market that are new. The rest are all second. A majority of them are second-hand cars, most of them which cannot pass even the environmental test from where they come from. So basically, it's policies, sensitivity by governments. We know Kenya is on the front line. We know Rwanda, Uganda have already put on policies. Ethiopia is also at the front line. So it's policies that will make us change due to the fossil burning of more fuel into the economies.
Besides the policies, there is the issue of high taxes. Quite a number of people have said that the taxes are too high for having an electric car in Kenya, and this is hindering them from making moves. What do you think should be done? Because it's about time that we also consider the cost of these electric cars. For instance, a 32-seater bus is said to go for 5.8 million shillings, quite high compared to fuel, bus that uses fuel.
Yes, we might look at that as one angle, but we're also looking at the environmental impact of the same. Because when you look at the environmental impact of developing just one bus, the amount of carbon print that is left by just manufacturing one bus is far much higher in comparison to an electric. You're also looking at the environmental impact onto the same. Safety, for example, noise pollution. We will ordinarily know in a Kenyan scenario how much noise pollution we get from our roads. At an electric side of it, you're looking at if these vehicles have to do like below 20 kilometers, right now there's a policy for them to have a beeper. 1, noise pollution, 2, carbon, and 3, where are we looking? The span for life. The wear and tear for an electric vehicle is far much less in comparison to when you're looking at a fossil fuel, a diesel or petrol car, which by chance also happens to have a lot of e-waste into the community, into everything, from oil changes, from the sheer size of it, because also the amount of metal that is used on an diesel-powered car is far much higher. So vis-a-vis, when you look at the long run, it's much cheaper.
When you say in the long run it's much cheaper, what does it take to maintain this car? Because I understand there is the specialized mechanics about the electric cars.
Well, other than the braking system, which uses a braking system that is regenerative, which on this case, even the braking system produces power back to the car. You're basically looking at the brakes being the highest, maybe the only thing that you'll need to replace in a long while in comparison to the other cars. The rest are motors, which will take quite a long while to replace. The batteries that are fuel or the battery packs have an average minimum lifespan of 10 years for them to be replaced. So once you look at that in comparison on how many times you'll have to do oil changes in a span of 10 years, on how many times you'll have to do engine and overhauls in the car in a span of 10 years, it's not in comparison.
Maybe for someone who is already interested in these electric cars, there is the charging system that is being used in this case. How long will a full charged battery take? For example, for someone who is doing public service, vehicle services in the country?
Okay. I'll talk about Agility Africa cars and motorbikes. Basically, we are looking at two things. We are looking at from 10 minutes to 15 minutes on our charging system for a full charge. But also on two-wheel transportation, we are looking at packs that give almost 75 kilometers on a single charge. This means you're going to have stations where they can replace the batteries once they need to replace as immediately. But due to the home solution and home packs, most of them will meet that. A single charge for our cars, we're looking at to do almost 400 kilometers on a single charge. So vis-a-vis that, it's much available. And yes, we will put more stations, some charger station in public buildings and malls to enable more accessibility of the same.
Since the use of these electric cars are environmental friendly, I believe there are quite a number of stakeholders who are supporting this initiative. But then it also has its own challenges, and the government is supporting it perhaps because of the fight in the effects of climate change. But then what do you think the government should do to fast track this exercise in having the country adopting fully to electric cars?
One of the biggest things is complete on its policy, which is being worked on the framework. The second thing is it's leading the way by leasing more electric vehicles than where it's been on the other side, doing more of diesel and petrol powered cars. We know Kenya Power is on the front line of doing the same with the budget allocations later in the year, later next year, to purchase more cars that are electric vehicles. What we look on to the other side is it calls on government incentives for them to have incentives on those who are in the front line of doing so. The country has a lot of hybrid cars. We will be glad to say we will be 100% fully electric cars in the market, not hybrids. But what we're looking at, tax initiatives that will allow investors and uptake from people, because we are not only looking at the consumption, we are looking at when there is more carbon emission, also diseases are high, they're going to spend on the hospitals because of the same. We're also looking at the time that is wasted. The waste, you go to most of our garages, when you look at them, most of those grounds cannot grow anything green due to the amount of waste that is there. So basically we're looking at that direction, that it'll be more cooperative from the government and the stakeholders. And finally, for it to put a capping on the amount of new vehicles, give incentives on amount of new vehicles that are coming into the market, since the biggest number of the vehicles that we have in the market are huge pollutants, even from where they come from. They can't even pass the test to be in their own market. So I think it's the best to encourage and give tax cuts and tax breaks into those willing to invest in the same sector.
Right. What is the way forward as a country now that this is a system that we want to adjust to? What would you urge Kenyans at large as you make your closing remarks?
Well, I want to urge Kenyans to look at the issue of electric vehicles differently. One, to the purposes of one, you're looking at the global demand. That's the direction. You're looking at the bigger players in the Europe market, Tesla and the rest. That's the way to go. One, it will save our environment. Our carbon print will go down. It will reduce our noise pollution in our markets, in our environment. We're also going to reduce on amount of car waste when it comes to used parts and all that, and trying to redo most of the vehicles and all that. But most importantly, on a parting shot, is the world right now at, as you know, right now it's at the COP27. And basically what is happening right now, the world globe over, it's an issue about carbon credits. Those who are investing into that, into the local economy, are also helping the country gain into more of the carbon credits and helping other sectors. And this goes a long way to the amount that they're spending, the government is spending on treating fossil fuels issues, into planting more trees, into planting and doing more things that are more green related. So I believe this is the way, and we will work with the various stakeholders, the various players, and basically we're going to see to it that a more greener Kenya and a more greener East Africa for the purposes and prosperity of everyone.
When you start talking about planting trees, this means that we also have to bring on board environmentalists for us to have a common goal. That is Frederick Muteti, the Agility East Africa Managing Director, shedding the lights more on immobility in the country and efforts being done by investors in Kenya and also East Africa at large in encouraging the use of electric cars. Thank you for creating time for us.
In
other news,